Hello and welcome. In today's video I'm going to be making a model of Jak and Daxter. This one is quite important to me. I have long been a fan of the Jak and Daxter games, played them ever since they released in 2001, 2002, whenever it was, and I immediately fell in love with the world, the game, the characters, but I've always wanted to have something that I could actually have amongst my collection to show my love for the characters. I have finally managed to find something on Etsy that I think is going to do that for me, but I have a lot of work to do, so I better get to it. So I've kind of just jumped straight into this. Previously on other video projects that I've done, other model projects that I've done, I have very much sort of taken a moment at the beginning of the video to really hammer in like my plan for the model, any initial concerns, any worries about what I am going to struggle with maybe, or sort of, what I'm going to have to overcome in, hopefully attempting to get the model finished. This time I was possibly a little bit childlike in my impatience to just get stuck in. I really just wanted to start getting paint on this model in the hopes that it would be completed a little bit quicker, if I'm completely honest with you. So just to kind of take that moment to actually begin to outline the plan for the project. Initially, I thought this was going to be super easy. I kind of was looking at it after having completed Raziel very recently. I kind of thought that I was going to be in for an easy ride with this one. I thought it was going to be more aligned with the Cult of the Lamb that I did off channel about a year ago or more. I thought it was going to be a bit more like that. Very little texture work, hopefully just some nice kind of complete full colours, something that looks nice and simplistic, effective, but not overly taxing. Well, I think I might have been wrong. The reason I say that is, basically a lot of these pieces don't fit together super well. There are bits with the torso that don't fully align, there's gaps all over the place. I think I'm going to have to use a lot of clay to fill in the gaps and make it look like a complete model. Also, when I set the torso on top of the legs, they aren't actually aligned. His torso is ever so slightly twisted in comparison to his legs, so there's like a little bit of a shelf. It's not major, but it's enough that I'm noticing it, so I haven't fully decided what I want to do about that just yet. In my head, I'm going to try and maybe sculpt in a little bit of clay to just smooth it off so it's not as much of an edge, but with what I've got to work with, I don't know whether that's going to be doable. The other thing as well, there's actually a few details missing from the model, sadly. So on the front of him, where he has the breastplate, so like the copper breastplate, in the character model, in the character illustrations, the concept art and stuff, that is all held onto his torso with a series of leather straps that kind of like hug the back of him, kind of like corset-like, I suppose, in the way it kind of like lynches at the back with the leather straps. They are completely missing on the model. The straps kind of go to the sides of his torsos and then disappear. So I do really want to fix that, because I don't like the fact that there's a detail missing on it. I want to be able to rectify that so that it looks right. That's definitely going to be a job with clay. Probably a very fiddly job, and maybe not the easiest, but I do really want to fix that because it's just wrong on the model. Like it's like I say, with there being that harsh line here and then nothing on the back, that's a problem to me. I've got to fix that. So it's going well. Colours are taking a long time to apply, which, you know, maybe it was a blessing in disguise that I decided to just leap into this. But yeah, colours are taking a lot of coats to just sort of like begin to look full and, you know, properly applied. It is taking a little bit. So whilst that is a shame, ultimately the work is going to be worth it. Talking about the model itself just quickly before I get into more work, it's such a bizarre thing, and I think part of the reason that I really was drawn to this model is it's kind of an amalgamation of all three versions of Jak from Jak 1, 2 and 3. It's got Jak 1's hair, Jak 3's armour, but then it looks like it's got Jak 2's legs. It's like the clothing on the bottom doesn't totally look like the armour from Jak 3. It's not quite got as much flair on the bottom side. So I think it's a bit of an amalgamated version of Jak, which is cool. Like, you know, again, that's part of the reason I wanted to get it, so it'd be like original, if you like. But yeah, so I'm having to make some creative decisions about sort of what I want to keep, what colours I want to use, etc, etc. Everything appears to be going well so far. Like the colours, as soon as I started getting like the copper work on his torso, it started to look and feel like Jak. The other big one is the base. At the moment, it's literally just on a copper disc. Literally just a black disc. And I hate it. Putting it bluntly, I hate it. The model deserves so much better. The model deserves a properly designed, sculpted base. And so that is what I'm going to do. I don't know entirely how I'm going to do it yet, but I know I would like to potentially keep in line with the vibe for Jak 3, as that's the armour that he has on. It'll also look quite distinct within my models as well if I get it right. What I would like to do is I would like to kind of sculpt a shaped, it's not going to be circular or square or whatever, it's going to be kind of designed. I'd like to sculpt a designed piece of terrain that potentially looks a little bit rocky, a little bit sort of wastelandy. Find a way to apply either a sand-like texture or sand so that it looks a bit like a desert, and then apply some decorative touches, so maybe some dead grasses, things like that. And if I can, I would like to find some mini egg type shapes that I can turn into precursor orbs so that I can decorate the base with things that look more specific to Jak's world. It's far more complicated than I thought it was going to be. It is so much more involved, which, you know, I think maybe with Raziel I got a little bit lax to a certain degree, where I was just filling in the blanks as I was going, and it admittedly was a lot easier than having done Kane. So this feels a little bit like the next step up, where I've got personalization I want to add into it, I've got decisions I want to make in terms of colour, and then actually sculpting a base that is going to be the final mount for the model. Whilst it wasn't intended to be, definitely feels like an elevation on what I had done previously, which is really cool. So for the moment, I am still applying base colours. It still is going to take a little while for those to kind of be completed, but like I say, the work will be worth it when it's done. But yeah, lots and lots and lots to do. amazingly, I am still applying base colours to the model. Daxter is exactly the same story as Jak, in which it's taking coat upon coat upon coat to actually get a nice, smooth, textured paint to actually be able to work on top of with my detailing work and stuff like that, and it's beginning to drive me a little bit insane. I don't know, maybe I've been really lucky with other paints that I've used, or maybe I've been really lucky with the other models that I've made, but this has never been an issue before where I've had to just keep applying coats of paint because the model's just super streaky. So I think I'm going to stop recording the base colour process for now, and I will just finish applying Daxter's base coats off camera. Mostly because it's kind of driving me mad, so never mind watching just a series of base colours be applied. But I also want to start thinking about how I'm going to start working with clay. It is the next phase. Having had the base colours on, I'm not going to be doing any detailing until I know exactly what clay is going to be applied to Jak, because then once that clay is applied, I'll then have to kind of top up some base colours potentially and, you know, paint on top of the clay so that the clay looks right. But yeah, I'm trying to decide what to do. I know I want to do these straps on the torso. That is probably going to be the first piece that I will do, simply because it's a problem that I want to fix. You know, it's something that is ultimately missing on the model, on the 3D print, and I would like to apply it so that it can actually be part of the full model. The sticking point for me with Jak currently is this shelf where his torso connects to his waist. From the front, which obviously is where it's going to be displayed mostly, it's not going to be visible. So is it that big of a deal? However, as I'm staring at it now, I can see that shelf really clearly, and so I'm a little bit... I truly don't know what to do about it. In my head, I've potentially toyed with the idea of, if you look at the concept art for Jak 3, he has a sash that goes the entire way around his waist, like you can't actually see the top of his legs because the sash is kind of just wrapped around the top. So I am toying with the idea of sculpting an extra layer of sash to go around the waist, but that feels very tricky, that feels very involved, and I don't know whether I've got the space to do it with the model as it is. Then on top of that, potentially having to have a very small anchor point for glue or fixative in any way, shape or form. I truly am undecided about how I'm going to tackle that, or whether I'm going to tackle it. So for now, I'm going to focus obviously on getting those straps in. Messing about with the clay is going to take some time because I've never done this before. When I did it with Kane on his neck, there was a clear gap that I needed to push the clay into. I'd applied glue already and then basically sculpted it whilst it was wet before the glue in it had hardened. This is totally different. This is, I'm going to have to apply clay, sculpt it down so it looks nice, remove it, then glue it back on, because obviously the clay isn't going to inherently stick to the model. So I don't really know how this is going to work. But obviously on top of that, I am beginning to think more about the base. I'm thinking of doing 2 layers of clay. One, a base that will probably be painted black, and then the sculpted piece on the top. That I think is probably going to be the nicest way to display it. I think it could look quite smart if I pull it off. But again, even that is not without its hurdles. I'm thinking about using a polymer clay for the black base, and then just using maybe an air drying clay or something for the actual terrain that I intend to design. So aside from me having to do a little bit more work on base colours, that is the next step. But yeah, not really sure how I'm going to tackle a lot of it, but we'll see, I guess. So finally, Jak and Daxter, as they stand, as I purchased them from Etsy, are completed. Obviously, there is more work to be done. I have spoken already about how I intend to do the base, but I thought this would be a good point to kind of review what I've done so far. This one truly tested me in a way I don't think I was prepared for. I don't know, I feel like when I look back over, say, Kane, Raziel, even the Ninja Turtles, all videos that are on the channel, by the way, if you're interested, I feel like those kind of came together quite meticulously, and whilst time-consuming, didn't really require a lot of backtracking and retreading for me. I literally just sort of, okay, the next phase is base colours, I'm going to do base colours. The next phase is texturing, I'm going to do texturing. This has been an uphill struggle from start to finish. The streakiness of the paint job initially was quite alarming. And whilst I kind of thought, okay, maybe I need to apply a coat of paint to apply a bit of texture so that then the second coat will cling to it, that just was not the case. It's taken many, many coats and many, many hours to actually get to the point where I feel like this is done. As it stands, there is a final pass of detail work that is going to be going over both Jak and Daxter, but I'm going to wait until I've constructed the base. Obviously, I have an idea of what the base is going to look like. You know, I've worked with clay in this way before, so I don't think it's going to be terribly difficult to make this work. However, you know, I'm kind of erring on the side of caution, if you like, and decided to take my time with it. But my intention is to make that wasteland setting that I spoke about in the beginning of the video. I want to construct a base layer that the model will be displayed on, and then the terrain piece, the decorative piece that will form the stand for Jak and Daxter. In my head, I'm envisioning sort of something very wasteland-esque in the sense that it'll be probably a piece of clay that is textured with like crumpled up tin foil to appear like kind of dry dirt or rock. And then actually, funnily enough, I'm waiting on a delivery today of it's a jar of sort of textured paste. I think it's supposed to be used for model train sets and things like that. But yes, this textured paste is sort of desert sand-esque, and I am intending to use that on the base. I have never used anything like it before. I don't entirely know what to expect as and when it arrives. However, I'm going to be trying to use that to create a genuine sand texture. Initially, my thoughts were to use PVA glue and sand. However, after sort of doing a little bit of research online and stuff like that, that doesn't seem to be a nice way to work with those materials, if you know what I mean. I think it can be quite messy and chaotic. So I'm going to try this paste stuff and see what comes of it. The beauty of it now is the fact that I can do little tests with things because I'm not actually applying anything directly to the model. I can kind of toy with things and, you know, settle on the best approach for the finished piece. I am happy with where Jak is at the moment. I think after having dry brushed it, it just mutes those colours beautifully to a point where it looks weathered, it looks sort of a bit more natural. I hate the garish colours when they first come out of the like little pots of paint. You know, I always enjoy knocking them back a little bit and just sort of dialing them down, making them look worn and kind of aged in a way. So I am pleased with where Jak stands currently. But yeah, this base is going to be an entirely new challenge, one that I'm excited for. My hands are kind of tied until the post arrives, but it is the next step, and yeah, what can possibly go wrong? Okay, so it's been a little bit since I made these, since I sculpted them. They're dry enough. So this one is actually pretty much completely dry. This one has been made for maybe 2 or 3 days by this point. So it's hardened nicely. So I'm going to put the base black on this one. The actual sort of like display stand in which Jak is going to stand, maybe could do with a little bit more drying time. It's mostly solid on the bit that's going to show. It's just more the underside of it it's not perfect. Anyway, I did decide in the end to do them both, or all pieces, in the air drying clay. When I looked at the polymer clay, the one that you have to sort of like bake to harden, it was just really difficult to work with, to be honest with you. It was really, really tough, and I didn't feel like... I felt like if it starts making things harder, why bother? Because this project's already been tough enough as it is. So, yeah, I'm going to be putting a base layer of black on everything, just mostly so that I can keep any kind of repeated colours consistent, because obviously Jak and Daxter have had a base of black on, and I don't want to kind of make one look brighter than the other, if you know what I mean. I want to keep them both the same sort of depth. So that's next. However, I have actually had, thanks to Hannah, a little bolt of inspiration. Initially, my intention for the base, as in this piece, was just to paint it black and have it as sort of like a neutral space for the more designed piece to stand on. However, Hannah was talking to me about it last night, and she was like, it seems a shame to sort of have a bland texture on the bottom. You know, you could do something with that. And so we talked about it back and forward. I could do this as like a precursor ring, which I think could look really, really cool, because that copper colour that I have on the armour, I just love it. I think it looks really, really cool. It would also stand to, again, separate it from a lot of my other models, because I either have only kind of like diorama-esque bases or black kind of like statue kind of bases. Something like this, if I've kind of had a hand in making it, I could actually make something a little bit more interesting. And so that's what I'm going to do. In one of my strategy guides as well, I actually have the precursor language, so it's literally kind of like the... what's the word? Like a cipher almost, so it's literally like A equals this symbol, B equals this symbol. I have the whole precursor language in the back of one of these strategy guides. So I don't entirely know what I'm going to have written around the edge of this ring. It may be something just as simple as Jak and Daxter. But yeah, I'm going to have a bit of fun and design something for this piece, so that it can actually just be a little bit more involved than just a plain base. So that is next on the agenda. Like I say, I got a little bit of drying time before this is ready to paint, which, you know, it'll be when it'll be. But yeah, I figured I could have a bit of fun with this precursor ring today and actually kind of try and design something really unique, which again is mostly down to Hannah's sort of assessment of it yesterday, where she was like, you should do something more than that, it can be better than a black ring. Which I suppose is kind of perfect, really, because I did criticize the fact that this just came on a black disc, so, you know, good point well made. But yes, so I'm just going to poot along today, doing some painting and trying to get this precursor ring to look as I want it to, and hopefully in a day or so this will be dry enough that I can actually paint it and start playing with this textured paste stuff. And here, at long last, is the finish line. I am really, really pleased. Really, really pleased with how everything turned out. I think I will always have certain issues with the model because I didn't think it was the most detailed sort of resin print from the word go. It has a simplicity to it that it treads a line of working against the model. However, I think what I've done with it I'm really pleased with. I'm happy that I made some of the choices that I did, and overall to be fair, I think since I started this I've been quite impatient to actually get it in my collection. To sort of stand between Raziel Kane, the turtles, all that kind of stuff. I've been quite impatient to get it there. So I feel like there's been certain parts of this process where in previous projects I have very much taken the time to kind of talk about it regularly, really go into the finer details of what I'm planning to do. I don't know, maybe it's just me from this point in the project, but I feel looking back I haven't been as in depth maybe about the process, or maybe I've skipped over certain steps just kind of due to impatience really more than anything else. Like I say, I'm excited to get it into the collection, and so I've been working towards that end since it started. The base came together really quickly actually. Once I kind of had a visual idea in my head of what I wanted it to look like, it all just sort of snapped into place. And I had intention to kind of break it down step by step, but I just blasted through it in the end. Everything ended up constructed out of the air drying clay just because it was easier. But yeah, I think it was probably more of an exercise in patience than anything else, because the air drying clay took a couple of days to dry. Like each piece of it took a couple of days to dry, and so in that time I just kind of had to twiddle my thumbs and wait. Which obviously, like I say, I've been very keen to get it finished since I bought it. So, that was probably the biggest challenge in doing the base. The model as a whole, I think the big thing that I'm just going to have to live with being an error is that little shelf on the back of his hip. The more I tried to problem solve that one, the more I kind of looked at it, the more I deliberated on what I could do to potentially address it, the less confident I was in my ability to actually do so. And not necessarily, not to kind of put myself down or anything, but I think more from a standpoint of the area that I had to work with was so small that I just don't think it would have been viable. I think it would have caused more problems than it solved. And, much like I have said in the past, this model is going to be displayed facing forward. And so those little errors that are on the hip, they're not really going to affect anybody but me. And so I think I kind of had to make my peace with the fact that that was just going to be an error that existed on the model. And, I suppose you could get into it and say that's what makes these things handmade. There are mistakes, there are problems, there are things you can't fix, there are imperfections. And I think because of that, it proves that I made it, I guess, I suppose is one way of looking at it as well. But yeah, I think after having thought about it long and hard for many weeks, that shelf on his hip was it's just a flaw in the print, and I've got to live with it. So, but aside from that, I'm really thrilled with how the colours came together. I think this sand textured paste at the bottom, amazing stuff. Really, really enjoyed working with it. It's like a paste, and so you can kind of like sculpt with it as well. Fun fact, so as I was making this, obviously it's 3 different pieces. So this precursor ring base is one, the actual terrain piece is a second, and then Jak stands on top. I'd run out of my old glue, so I went and got some more glue. But during the sculpting process, when I was actually, designing the sand to I wanted it to look like he just stood into it. So like that kind of ripple effect that you get with sand, how it kind of like bows up as you stand into it, or sort of like bury your foot in it almost. I wanted that to kind of be the thing around his foot, so it looked a little bit more real, a little bit more kind of like interacted with. And obviously, in order to do that, in order to make it look convincing, I had to put Jak in place to sculpt around his boot. Well, basically it's glued into the spot. I haven't actually used glue to put Jak onto the model because by the time I had sculpted that, let it set enough that when I pulled Jak's boot out, it wasn't going to actually like just melt into the hole. Yeah, he was basically fused in place. The sand and the paste had kind of affixed to his boot and just held him there. And so in the end, he's not actually glued to the base. I quietly hope that as the materials settle, he'll kind of come free so that I can actually take him out, glue him in properly, and kind of fully cement him in there. But for the time being, he is stuck rigid. I don't think I'm actually going to be able to get him off there anytime soon. So that's just, it's one of those things. It certainly doesn't affect the model adversely, but it's just a funny little thing. But yeah, this truly does tick a huge box for me. It fulfills a childhood desire. It fulfills something that I wanted for a long time when I was a kid. And it's so cool to actually finally have one, you know. I've had these moments since starting this where, you know, I look at my collection and it all used to be sort of like, you know, statues from collector's editions or just independent statues that I wanted of like certain characters or whatever. And, you know, even Funko Pops and all of that kind of stuff, like that's what my collection has been largely built of. But it's been so rewarding to actually look at it and be like, well, I made that one, I made that one, I made that one. And to have such influential characters like Jak and Daxter, you know, they were pivotal. Those games were pivotal in my life when I was a child, you know, though it's so cool to be able to look at that and be like, not only do I finally have one in my collection, but I made it. And it's so very cool. It genuinely, just makes me so happy to look at them. You know, I'm really, really proud of the work that I've done with them. But then I think having that I helped bring this into being thing as well, it makes it doubly rewarding. So I am super, super thrilled with how Jak and Daxter turned out. A far harder project than I expected. It took a lot more time than I anticipated. I genuinely thought that this was going to be a quick and easy build. But it turned out to be very different to that. And so, you know, it's been rewarding in many ways, challenging in many. But yeah, ultimately I'm just so thrilled to finally have it complete and ready to be displayed. Next up on the channel is going to be something a little bit different. I'm not going to go into it too much here, simply because this video is about Jak and Daxter. However, it's expensive making models all the time, you know, especially the types of models that I enjoy making. It's expensive, and so I'm going to have to kind of stop the model making for a little bit just whilst I kind of transition, or, well, honestly, have saved enough money so that I can get another one. But it's going to be something a little bit different next time, so stay tuned if you're interested for that. More updates to come in the future. But otherwise, if you've made it all the way through this, I truly appreciate you watching. It really does mean a lot to me. And yeah, I guess I'll see you next time.